Hi, NorthField. I'm Laura.
And I'm Kim. I get to serve as the kids pastor here at NorthField.
And we have Kim here with us today because we are talking about all things kid stuff, and we want to hear all about what's going on.
Okay, so the first thing that's coming up is the Easter egg hunt. We're so excited.
We're so excited about the Easter egg hunt. Can't wait. We'll talk about that more in a second, though.
And the next thing that's coming up is child dedication. And don't you have kids that you want to dedicate?
I do. I have 2 children. We have not dedicated them yet, so I would love to hear more about this.
Okay, so this is open to all children. It's not just a baby dedication, it's children dedication. For a couple of reasons. One is we haven't had one yet for a while because of, the pandemic.
Yes.
And another thing we'd like to just point out is maybe you have recently come to faith and you're interested in dedicating your child, or you're new to NorthField and you never were able to do that where you served before.
Yeah.
And we just want to offer that to you as a family. So child dedication is truly just dedicating your children back to Jesus. It's going to be a holy ceremony. We're going to offer classes. We'll have professional photos taken of your family.
I love the professional photos part. And I also love that it's not just for babies, because I have a toddler too. So it's nice to know that it's children of all ages.
It is. Yeah,
come
truly.
Come all.
Come on, come all. Be dedicated. That's right. And if you're interested in more information about the classes, getting signed up for the photographs, head over to northfieldchurch.net/events.
And then we also mentioned the Easter egg hunt. We have to circle back to that. I'm so excited for the Easter egg hunt. There's going to be not just an Easter egg hunt, but there's also going to be a scavenger hunt, Easter bunny photos. We just found out there's going to be food trucks, and I think one of them has donuts. So you really can't beat a good donut food truck, in my opinion.
Donuts are the best.
Wasn't there something else we wanted to say about that too?
I think I just wanted to say, invite your friends, invite every kid you know. This is going to be a huge event.
It's going to be huge.
It's going to be huge. So have a great week. We'll see you soon.
Morning, NorthField. Good morning, NorthField. Would you stand with us? We worship the God who was. We worship the God who is. We worship the God who evermore will be. He opened the prison doors. He parted the raging sea. My God, He holds the victory. Yeah. There's joy in the house of the Lord. There's joy in the house of the Lord today. We won't be quiet. Shout out your praise. There's joy in the house of the Lord. Our God is surely in His place. We won't be quiet. Shout out your praise. We sing to the God who heals. We sing to the God who saves. We sing to the God who always makes a way. 'Cause He hung up on that cross, and He rose up from that grave. My God still runs storms away. There's joy in the house of the Lord. There's joy in the house of the Lord today. We won't be quiet. Shout out your praise. There's joy in the house of the Lord. Our God is surely in His place. We won't be quiet. Shout out your praise. Do you believe it, church? There's a lot of joy in this room. We were the beggars, but we've been set free. We were the beggars, and now we're royalty. We were the prisoners, and now we're running free. We are forgiven, accepted, redeemed by His grace. Let the house of the Lord sing praise. We were the beggars, and now we're royalty. We were the prisoners, and now we're running free. We are forgiven, accepted, redeemed by His grace. Let the house of the Lord sing praise. There's joy in the house of the Lord. There's joy in the house of the Lord today. We won't be quiet. Shout out your praise. There's joy in the house of the Lord. Our God is surely in this place. We won't be quiet. Shout out your praise. There's joy in the house of the Lord. There's joy in the house of the Lord today. We won't be quiet. Shout out your praise. There's joy in the house of the Lord. Our God is surely in this place. We won't be quiet. We were the beggars, now we're royalty. We were the prisoners, now we're running free. We are forgiven, accepted, redeemed by His grace. Let the house of the Lord sing praise. Here we go. We were the beggars, and now we're royalty. We were the prisoners, and now we're running free. We are forgiven, accepted, redeemed by His grace. Let the house of the Lord sing praise.
Good morning. Y'all can have a seat just for a second. Good morning. My name is Savannah, and I get to work with our Next Gen team here at NorthField. And whether you're watching from here in the house, you are on the beach, or you're at home, I want to just say a welcome to you. And whether this is your first time at NorthField or your 100th time at NorthField, again, just another welcome. And I'm so glad that you're here. There are so many places that you could be this morning, but thank you for being here. If y'all want to do a little bit of good just from your seat this morning, you can pull out your phone and you can check in here at NorthField on Facebook or Instagram. And by doing so, we're partnering with Checking In for Giving a Surgery. Just kidding. Oh, we're checking in for life-changing surgeries for people in need. So if you want to check in this morning, we're going to be giving back for that purpose. Another thing you can do is pull out your phone to check in and go onto the digital connection card. By doing so, you can find out more about events coming up. You can find out about more of our ministries. You can get plugged in somewhere. And one place you can get plugged in really quickly is our Easter egg hunt. And that is going to be the week before Easter. I've been calling it an extravaganza. Get it? Extravaganza. Thank you. It was a pity laugh. But we're going to have a lot of stuff going on there. And so if you're wanting to get plugged in, have a little bit of fun, and serve your community, you can do so. Go to the events tab and sign up today. Well, we're about to go back into worship. So if y'all want to get up on your feet, let's worship together.
Do you know He is good? Sing with us this morning.
Song.
never gonna let me down. You're 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 never gonna let me down. 'Cause you are good, you're good. Oh, you are good, you're good. Oh, you are good, you're When the night is holding on to me, God is holding on.
Good, and that he's never going to let us down. I love that. Hey, if you're here in the house, you guys can go ahead and have a seat. If you're at your house, you can do whatever you want because it's your house. But on your way in, you had a chance to grab one of these little communion cups. If you're joining us online or a little bit later in the week, we would love for you to be a part of this moment as well. I love this opportunity that we have to declare that God is good. Because as we walk through life, we realize that there are circumstances that are not good. Is that fair to say? As we walk through life, there are circumstances that are not good, but it is a powerful item to remind ourselves as often as possible that God is good and that he is going to make good on promises that he's made that have yet to have been kept. But in that, it doesn't mean that God is far from us. It doesn't mean that God doesn't care about us. Because one of the things that I love most about God is his ability to take situations that seem hopeless, to take situations that seem helpless, to take situations that seem like there's no good that can come from it. And he can transform it, he can make it new. That's why those of us can say that we were once lost, but now we're what? Yeah, that we were blind, but now we can. You see, God really just works in the contrast in a number of ways. And as we're celebrating in just a few weeks, Good Friday, well, if you were there on that Good Friday, it's hard to describe it as good. Yet we can sing songs and we can declare that God, you are good, but in the situations in our life that aren't good, is God still good? Yeah. Sometimes it takes a little bit more beneath the surface to remember that and to realize that, but he is good. And the reason that we can declare that is part of this moment that we're celebrating in communion, because it's a moment that we look back at what God has done in the past, and what it does is it gives us a sense of peace and comfort right here and right now, but it also gives us hope for our futures. And so I want to invite you, if you haven't already, to peel back and to take just a small piece of bread. And there's nothing really extraordinary about this bread other than the story that it tells. Because what this bread represents is it represents the body, the real body of our human and God, Jesus. The same one that came to this earth that waded into our mess, lived among us, performed signs and wonders and taught incredible things But it didn't stop there. It was the same God that gave up his life for us. So if you haven't, I invite you to take it and to eat it. In the same way, you got a cup of juice, and again, there's nothing of extraordinary value in this juice. You could probably go buy some at Kroger if you want to. But the juice that you're going to buy over there at Kroger, it's not going to have the same significance that this moment does. Because this is a moment that we recognize and we remember the very real blood that was shed on our behalf. The very blood that would seal a covenantal promise that God has made to us, to be our God and to be our God forever. And so if you haven't, I invite you to take the cup and to drink it. And when we do this, when we pause in the busyness of our lives, when we pause in our worship to remember what God has done for us, well, it's a motivating factor. It reminds us of the mission that we have to pour out our lives right back to what God would have us do in this world. And so I love, again, as we said earlier, that Jesus operates in the world of contrast. And so today we're going to sing a couple songs about a cross that if you were around in the first century, if you were around in the time of Jesus's crucifixion, you would not want any talk of cross, because then it represented a symbol of death. But today we get to boast in a cross, because it is that very cross that offered the deliverance that we have into this new life with Jesus. So would you stand and declare with us the power of a cross?
The day that death surrendered to the mighty cross of Jesus Christ, the earth would shake beneath the weight of darkened skies. On his brow a crown of sorrow, for a king whose weakness was our strength. No word he spoke, his love was shown for all to see. Oh, the cross of Jesus Christ is the reason I'm alive, for his blood has set me free. It'll never lose its to reveal the fullness of His reign. Our hearts will bow before the Son of Jesus. Oh, the cross of Jesus Christ is a reason I'm alive. For His blood has set me free. It'll never lose its power for me. The cross of Jesus Christ is a reason I'm alive. For His blood has set me free. It'll never lose its power for me. It'll never lose its power for me. It'll never lose its power for me. At the cross, I surrender my life. I'm in awe of You. I'm in awe of You. Where Your love ran in my sin washed white. I owe all to You. I owe all to You. My hope is found here on holy ground. Here I bow down. Here I bow down. Here, arms open wide. Here to save my life. Here I bow down. Here I bow down. Here, my hope is found here on holy ground. Here I bow down. Here I bow down. Here, arms open wide. Here to save my life. Here I bow down. Here I bow. At the cross, I surrender my life. I'm in awe of You. I'm in awe of You. Where Your love ran red in my sin washed white. I owe all to You. I owe all to You. At the cross, I surrender my life. I'm in awe of You. I'm in awe of You. Where Your love ran red in my sin washed white. I owe all to You. I owe all to You. I owe all to You. I owe all to You,
Cast my mind to Calvary, where Jesus bled and died for me. I see His wounds, His hands, His feet, my Savior on that cursed tree. His body bound and drenched in tears, they laid Him down in Joseph's tomb. The entrance sealed by heavy stone, Messiah still. shall pierce the night, and I will rise among the saints. My gaze transfixed on Jesus' face. Oh, praise the name of the Lord our God. Oh, praise His name forevermore. For endless days we will sing Your praise. Oh Lord our God. Sing it out. Oh, praise the name of the Lord our God. Oh, praise His name forevermore. For endless days we will sing Your praise. Oh Lord our God. Oh, praise the name of the Lord our God. Oh, praise His name forevermore. For endless days we will sing Your praise. Oh Lord our God. Oh Lord.
Yeah, Father, we're clapping for You. We're clapping because we're celebrating You've done something in and through us that we could not do for ourselves. And as we declared in this song, God, may the anthem of our lives and the song of our lives be an endless outpouring of praise for You. And as we learn to do this and as we develop this habit right here and right now, I'm thankful that it is the glimpse of the eternity that we'll spend with You. In the place where there's no mourning and there's no pain, but a place that it is lit up by the majesty of You and You alone. And there'll be no distractions, but it'll be us and You forever. And we'll pour out our praise day in and day out. Father, I'm thankful that we get to do this as a church, but really that we get to do this like family to one another. And it's in Jesus' name that this is all possible, and it's in His name that we pray. Amen. Hey, you guys can go ahead and have a seat. My name is Trent. I'm one of the pastors here at NorthField. Tom, who normally is up here, the guy who speaks, he is out in, he's skiing this week. Everybody goes to the beach for spring break. Not Tom. He goes to the cold. He likes the beach, but this is his like R&R time. So if you think of him today, just be praying for him, just getting some rest. But he'll be back with us here in a couple of weeks. But we're going to kind of detour for a couple of weeks. But before we jump in, I want to tell you a couple of things. One is if you have not downloaded our new app, we would love for you to do so. It's the Church Center app. If you have any questions on it, if you need a little help, need a little bit of guidance, go to northfieldchurch.net/app. You'll find some step-by-step instructions. You'll find some ways that you can jump in. But many of you, we've heard some great feedback, have kind of jumped into this app, started exploring. Some of you have even won some gifts and prizes by being the first to find some little Easter eggs hidden on the app as well. But in that, the goal for this was really to have an app that was fully encompassing of everything that we do here. And so some of you may have even used that added benefit of kids check-in today. I probably should have checked. I hope that went well. I know that this was new. And so if it didn't, bear with us. We're trying. But again, we're exploring new ways to just be able to utilize technology in ways that are productive for you, and especially in the realm of NorthField Church. So be sure you get that app. Also, coming up in just a couple of weeks, Savannah talked about it in the opening this morning, that we have got our annual Easter egg hunt coming up that you can be a part of Easter weekend. But another component of that is on Good Friday. The reason that it is now called Good Friday is because of what God transformed that day to become. And so in that, we have an opportunity for you, if it's your time to partner with us for your next step in your spiritual journey. If that's a day that you've been, if this is a moment that you've been thinking about baptism, Good Friday could be an opportunity for you to take that next step in baptism, because we're turning that night into a night of worship and a night of celebration. And really, what we're going to do on that day is we're going to die to our old selves, because that's what Good Friday was all about. It was the time that Jesus gave up his life, because we now know on the backside of this that a couple of days later, that same Jesus that died, well, he would raise to a new life as well. And we have that opportunity right here and right now. And so if you want to make Good Friday that day that you say, you know what, I'm going to declare to the world that I'm ready, that I'm taking that step, that I'm marking my allegiance with King Jesus, and in that I'm going to let go of my old self. I'm going to let go of my old past, and I'm going to walk in a new life. Well, that could be your opportunity to do so. So let us know. You got that digital connection card there. Feel free. Even if you've already done the connection card, you think, oh, I can't do it again. Yes, you can. Do it again. Scan the QR code and let's get on with it. But we would love for you to be a part of that day as well. Now, I told you today we're going to take a small little detour over a couple of weeks. We've been in a series over the Beatitudes called The Blessed Life, and we're going to continue that. We'll finish it up once Tom gets back and before we get into our Easter season. But in this, we're going to take a little bit of a detour, which might be fitting given the number of you that might be watching from I-65 on your way back from Panama City. You know that little stretch of traffic that you always hit? It doesn't matter what time of day you're going through, but there's that one patch on 65 where everything just gets backed up and you're like, what in the world? Like, Waze doesn't say there's an accident. There's no police officers. We just get stuck right there, okay? This is what we're doing right now, okay? We're detouring around a little bit of traffic for our spring break audience, so there you go, you've got it there. But let me tell you, one of my joys, my greatest joys, and also one of my greatest annoyances takes place in a car. Not when I'm by myself in a car. It's generally when somebody else is in the car with me that the joy and the annoyance happens at the same time. It comes in the form of my son, Jack. And some of you know Jack, some of you don't know Jack. Okay. Anyway, sorry, that was a bad joke. But some of you know my son Jack, some of you don't. Either way, Jack is funny. He's hilarious. I think he's one of the funniest people I've ever met, but because we're so similar, and I think I'm one of the funniest people I've ever met. And so we share a lot in common in that. But also, Jack is incredibly observant. So he's paying attention a lot to what's going on around him. Sometimes he's super, super talkative, but then other times, like, he's just really subdued and, like, doesn't have a whole lot to say. Some of you are like, there's no way. I promise you, he is. It just depends on the day, depends on the mood that you get him. But I love riding in the car with him because he's paying attention. He sees every car, he sees every truck that we pass. And anytime we pass a semi truck or one's coming this way, or it doesn't matter, he goes, ooh, look at that truck. Like, that's how he says it. Like, look at that truck. He's so excited. And then, how many of you seen Cars? Anybody seen that movie, Disney movie, Pixar movie? Yep, seen Cars. How many of you seen it 12 times? How many of you have seen it 6 times this week? Anybody else? Yep, I did. Stomach bug got our house, and so we just watched Cars for, I don't know, the whole time. But in that, he quoted, it's a pretty obscure moment in Cars, but there's a part where Lightning McQueen, he gets dumped out of the back of Mac, the car that drives, or the big truck that drives him around all the way, and so he's chasing after this other car, and he's like, Mac, 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 and the old truck goes, I ain't no Mac. What's he say? Anybody? Yes, I got some Cars fans. I'm a Peterbilt, right? That's it. And if you see, I promise you, if you see Jack today, go up to him and just say, I ain't no Mac, and he'll say back, I'm a Peterbilt. He knows the line. He knows he's a movie quoter. All right, it's fun in this. But every time we see a truck, that's what he'll say. Oh, look at that truck. And he goes, I ain't no Mac, I'm a Peterbilt. Anytime we see a yellow car, he's like, ooh, look at the yellow car. I don't know what it is about yellow cars. Maybe, I don't know what his feelings are on that, but he's like, look at these yellow cars. And it's fun. And in that other days, it's funny, he just has like the 1,000-yard stare. I don't know if anybody else's kids do this, but he'll just like be looking out the window. Just watching. And I'll catch him from the rear view. I'm like, Jack, what are you thinking about? And sometimes it's nothing. I'm like, okay, anything going on up there? And then other days, like, it just leads to a really as deep of a conversation as you can have with a 3-year-old, but in that, it leads to just great windshield time that we get together. And so that's the greatest joy side. Then there's an annoying side to riding in the car with Jack. And if I thought his mother, she's not in here, if I thought his mother was a backseat driver, well, apparently that's an inherited trait, because from the back seat all the time, I get this too. Go, Dada. Go, Dada. Go fast, Dad. Go fast. Or slow down. Slow down. Dad, slow down. And I'm like, dude, like, we'll be at a red light. And he's like, go, Dada. Go, Dada. Have you ever tried to explain traffic lights to a toddler? It's just like, dude, what do you want me to do? Like, if I could go, I would be going. Or we'll be in the neighborhood. We'll just get in the car. He's like, go fast. Go fast. I'm like, dude, it's a 20-mile-an-hour speed limit. Like, we're in a neighborhood. You got to be safe. Like, we can't do everything like this. And in this, it's just chirp, 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 chirp. Well, it's in these moments that we hit traffic. And he's like, go, Dad. I'm like, buddy, I would love to, but I can't. Because we're sitting in traffic because all these people want to go all the way around everybody else and merge in up here, and it causes this backup. And so he can sense it in me, or at least I can sense it in me, that I'm starting to get mad because it just drives me nuts. It's one of my pet peeves of driving, that I just got to control myself. And in this, when I got a kid chirping at me, go dada, go dada, go dada, I'm like, I'm trying to, but this guy is not okay, buddy, I'm sorry, yep. It's in these moments that this greatest annoyance of my life, it seems like, behind the wheel of a car, is a little bit like what we're going to be talking about today. It's what I call a wilderness moment. And you'll see a wilderness moment's a little more serious than in being stuck in traffic with a toddler, but the feelings that come from this specific example is one that is like some of the experiences that we have when we walk through wilderness moments in our lives as well. Some of the common experiences of a wilderness is this. Here's one of them, is that there's no definitive end, right? If you sit in traffic, sometimes you can see where the traffic ends. Sometimes you're just like, I'm stuck behind this 18-wheeler and I can't see around. And so I don't know when this will clear up. I don't know how we'll get around. I don't know when, but there's no seemingly end in sight. Another common wilderness experience is that as we walk, you realize that you don't know everything. Anybody ever encountered an experience like that where you realize that you didn't know as much as you thought you did? Anybody? You can be honest, that's okay. I have this happen a lot, but I don't know about you. I don't know if it's a confidence thing. It's probably an arrogance thing, but in me, I like to walk around like I know what I'm talking about. I like to feel as if I have at least a little bit of authority in whatever it is that I'm speaking on. And there's times that I do, and there's a lot of times that I don't, but I don't want to tip my hand to that. And so a lot of times I want to walk with confidence, want to walk with this assurance, but a wilderness moment has a way of reminding you, hey, you don't know everything that you thought you knew. If you knew me back in my 20s, you would have known I was a genius because I knew everything then. And as I've gotten older, and especially as I've had kids, I realized I don't know anything. I used to be an expert parent until I had kids, and now I am not an expert parent. But wilderness experiences, they have a way of reminding us, you don't know everything. And you don't know everything that you thought you knew. Another common wilderness experience is that it comes with feelings of emptiness, of loneliness, being uncomfortable, and sometimes even disorienting. You see, wilderness moments have a way, it's kind of like driving in the fog. Before you get there, you can see clearly all around you, but as soon as you get into that wall of fog, so to speak, well, suddenly you can't see as far into the future as you thought you could. You look in the rear view and you can't see as far back. You don't remember as much about the past as you used to. And in this, you realize, okay, something's up here. Something is different. If I had to put a definition on a wilderness experience or a wilderness moment, it's the experience that something has changed externally that makes you feel lost internally. That something has changed in your surroundings, something has changed in your life experience, something has happened in what your life has looked like, and what it has done is it may have changed some circumstances around you, but more importantly, it's changed the way that you feel on the inside. And not in a way that it's growth, not in a way that you're moving on into this new kind of way of thinking. That may come from a wilderness, and we'll talk about that a little bit next week, but really in the moment, especially when we first find ourselves in a wilderness, well, it can be disorienting. It can be uncomfortable. It can be, honestly, a lot of life that we wouldn't choose for ourselves. Now, I don't know what it is that you may be walking through in a wilderness. I don't know what caused your wilderness, but like I said earlier, a lot of times the wilderness experiences that we have in life are a little more serious than being stuck in traffic with a toddler. A lot of times our wilderness experiences start with something that we wouldn't choose for ourselves. Your wilderness experience may have started when you lost your job. That all of a sudden the career path that you'd been on forever has to change. Or maybe your wilderness moment started when that business deal that you thought was going to change everything suddenly fell through. You see, your wilderness experience may have started when you lost a loved one, when that rock in your family suddenly passes on, and all of a sudden you think, who am I going to go to? This is my sounding board. This is my wise counsel. This was my person. Your wilderness experience may have started with a divorce. Maybe it was your spouse, or maybe you grew up in a household where you walked through your parents getting a divorce. I don't know where it may be, you may be on that spectrum, but I know this, that divorce has a far-reaching feel and grab into our world, and that may have been the catalyst to your wilderness experience. I know it's been a while since we've used this word, and I'm sorry to bring it up, but maybe it's that whole global pandemic thing, that thing that looked like, we're in it, and now it's like we're out of it, but it's like we're not really out of it. We've just kind of moved on to something else. We don't want to think about it, but in a lot of ways, we're still walking through this whole pandemic thing. Maybe your wilderness experience started because right now you're walking through for the very first time what it looks like to see to see a world that is at war with one another. And some of you that have a little more life experience, you've walked through these waters before, but for a lot of people, this is the very first global conflict that they've seen on a large scale like this as you watch the news about what's happening in Russia and Ukraine. You see, that can be very disorienting to your thought process and to the way that you view life. Your wilderness experience may have started at that doctor's appointment, where the only word that you heard was cancer. And beyond that, it was, I missed everything, but that moment right there, that was an external change that caused me to feel lost on the inside. One that's personal to my wife and me, is walking the road of a miscarriage. That was the start of a major wilderness moment for our lives. And I know many of you have walked that journey as well, and to say that we've walked is probably a little bit difficult because a lot of us, we traverse through wildernesses the same, and we don't walk through them. We wander through wildernesses. That's the way that we move in and through a wilderness. We don't walk, we wander. And what does it mean to wander? Well, to wander, it means that we move about without a fixed course or an aim or a goal, or we go idly about. You see, this is the pace in which we walk through the wilderness of life. In a lot of other ways, we want to have that confidence. We want to have that assurance. We want to walk like strong and know what we're doing. Yes. But a wilderness has a way of changing our pace a little bit, doesn't it? That suddenly we're not walking and living with purpose. Suddenly we're walking or wandering about, not really knowing and sure of the next step that we should take. You see, a lot changes for us when we walk through or when we experience those wilderness moments. But it's not just our pace that begins to change in a wilderness. In addition to a change in our pace comes an addition of some lies that begin to get whispered into our ears. Some of it's from our voice, some of it's from that voice that's in your head that just doesn't stop talking. Some of it's from other people giving their 2 cents on your current circumstances. And you'll let things creep in and statements creep in that say things like, I'll never be happy again. I mean, are you looking around at my circumstances? Are you looking at this like cloud that is just following me all around? How could I ever be happy again because of this experience that I'm walking through or trying to traverse through right now? Or we'll start to believe that nothing good can come from our experience. And that's a common thing that we think, no good can come from this. Like, are you paying attention? What do you mean God's going to use this? Do you not see what I'm walking in and through right now? No good can come from this. And I think worse yet, there's another lie that we start to believe, that we start thinking to ourselves, there's really no point in continuing. I mean, there's really no point in fighting anymore. There's really no point in trying, I guess just it is what it is, and this is going to be my life from here on out. You see, a wilderness has a way of changing the way we believe, and in doing so, it starts to adjust and maybe even forces us for the first time to ask some questions that we've never asked before. Or what it does is it calls us to call God's character into question. Because if God is all seeing, if God is all knowing, if God is all present, where the heck is he? Because as I walk through this wilderness experience in my life, it doesn't look like God's really up to much of anything in my life other than letting me down. As we walk through these experiences, we begin to question, God, where are you in all this? Or worse yet, we question, like, does God even care about this? Or we ask, is God even aware of the suffering that's taking place in my life? You see, wilderness experiences, they have a way of changing and adjusting how we feel on the inside in ways that we may not have experienced before. Now, there's 2 audiences of people that are hearing this today. The first audience is those of you that you're in a wilderness right now. That everything that I've talked about, you've just been like, great. I'm so glad we're talking about this. It's not like this is the only thing I think about Monday through Saturday anyway, that now I got to come to church and we're going to talk about the same thing. But in this, I want you to know, if you're walking through a wilderness right now, these next 2 weeks are for you. These next 2 weeks are for you. And if you're not one of those people that's walking through a wilderness right now, I'm so happy for you. I'm glad that things are going well, and I hope that it is strengthening your faith day in and day out, because what is going to happen is you will find yourself in a wilderness at some point. Wildernesses, they do not discriminate. They come for all of us at times. And so, if you're not one of those people walking through a wilderness, I hope today is something that you file away for the next time that you find yourself wandering in a life experience that you don't. And regardless of where you are, whether you're in a wilderness or not, one of the goals of the next 2 weeks is that you would adopt a new perspective to the wildernesses of your life. And I know that seems maybe backwards or a little bit counterproductive, but sometimes the thing that we want most out of a wilderness is what? We want out, right? If we find ourselves in a wilderness, we go, okay, God, take me back to the way things were. Can I just go back? Or we plead like, okay, God, like let's rush through this and let's get on to the new normal, so to speak. Let's move beyond what we're experiencing right now. But if we're not careful when it comes to the wilderness experiences of our lives, sometimes our desire to get out of the wilderness will cause us to miss what God has for us in the wilderness. If we're not careful, and if we want to push through and push through and push through, God, get me past this, get me past this, get me past this, or God, take me back, take me back, take me back. Our desire to get out of the wilderness can cause us to miss what God would have for us in the wilderness. So over the next 2 weeks, we're gonna be doing a flyover, really, of an incredible, really an epic saga of the Old Testament, where God's people, they're delivered from slavery in Egypt and they're walking in freedom. They're not quite to the promised land, but there's about a 40-year journey where they are wandering in the wilderness. It's really funny. I think we'll look at it next week, but there's a verse in Deuteronomy. It says it's in about an 11-day journey from where they started to where they ended up. 11 days, that's it. And then it says, and for 40 years they walked. For 40 years, it's like, did we make a wrong turn? And it's like, I think we made a few wrong turns. If 11 days turned into 40 years, but God has something for us in the wilderness. God has something for you in the wilderness. And so in this, that's where we're going to kind of pick up today is after the incredible Passover experience, after the 10 plagues, after the children of Israel told, you get out of this land of Egypt, you get out of here. Well, they start to make their way, and then they find themselves right up against the Red Sea. And so they're sandwiched between the Red Sea, which is just death, and then they're being chased by the Egyptian armies, which is also death. So they're just in a place where they go, we don't know what we're going to do. And God delivers them, parts the waters of the sea, and they pass over on dry land, and they find themselves wandering on their way to this promised land, to this gift that God is giving them. And that's where we're going to pick up today. It's where we're going to jump in and look at the story, because this is in Exodus chapter 16 verse 1. It says that they set out, and all the congregation of the people of Israel, they set out and they came to the wilderness. And on the 15th day of the second month, they had departed from the land of Egypt. And now, what's interesting in this, you got to know, is if you look back at the Passover moment, that Passover experience happened on the 15th day of the first month. So we're about 30 days in to this wandering, this wilderness experience. And you'll see how the morale changes of the people of Israel. Check this out. It says that the whole congregation of the people of Israel, they grumbled against Moses and Aaron. Hold up, they grumbled. 400 years they've been in slavery. 400 years they've been oppressed. 400 years they've been told the way that they were going to live. And now they have a taste of freedom for a month. A taste of freedom for a month. And now the grumbles begin. So they begin to grumble against Moses and Aaron in the wilderness. And the people of Israel, they said to them, what is that, we would have died by the hand of the God in Egypt? That we were going to die there? But instead, he goes, at least in Egypt, we sat around meat pots and we ate bread to the full. Moses, Aaron, you brought us out into the wilderness to kill this whole thing because we're hungry. Yeah, we got freedom, but what's freedom when you got a hunger pain? Well, you see and you realize what they were willing to trade. You see, this is what a wilderness starts to do to us. It starts to change the way that we think. It starts to change the way that we misremember the past. And you think about the Israelites talking about how good they had it. in slavery in Egypt. What? How good they had it back then? How good did you have it? What you had was, you had at least a few free meals a day and a place to sleep. But instead, the way they look at it is now we've just been brought out into the wilderness to die hungry. And in this, what I love is that God hears, and we'll talk about this in a second, but the next verse, it says that the Lord said to Moses, he says, behold, I'm about to rain bread from heaven for you. And this is where I've got to watch myself because I'm just sarcastic in nature. And so everything I read, that's kind of the default. And so I've always used to read this in such a way that God's just being sarcastic, like, oh, you're hungry? Okay. Hungry? I'll give you some food. I'll give you some food. I'll make it rain bread in here, pal. You want to see how hungry you are after that? And so that's the way that I want to read it because I think like, oh, God's humorous. He's trying to be sarcastic. But I've realized, I think I've come to the conclusion, I don't think this is sarcastic language from God. I think this is a love language from God. Just saying, look, I know. I'm aware of what's going on. And I know that you're hungry. And he says, so behold, I'm about to rain bread from heaven for you and the people. The people shall go out and gather every day a portion that they need for the day. Every day, go out and gather a portion of what you would need for the day. And then in verse 11, this is what it says. It says that the Lord said to Moses, I have heard. I have heard. Now, I talked about my son, Jack, earlier, so it's only fair that I talk about my daughter, Elle. Elle is about 8 months old now. And in this, Elle's learning her voice, which is loud. That's the best way I can put it. It is loud. But she's learning new words. She's got teeth coming in now. She's starting to form different things together. We don't know if she's saying Jack, Dada, Mama. Either way, she's trying. But what we've realized is that in the house where you have three people who can fluently talk to one another, and you have one that can't, well, she just speaks in whatever she can. She just speaks in sounds. And we don't know what she's trying to say. We just know that she's trying to say it. And it's fun because you probably know this, especially if you got kids or you remember the days of kids in the house, that the kids, it just gets loud. Okay, and you're talking to each other, and then the kid, like Jack's trying to match here, and then Haley and I are talking, we're getting here, and then Jack's getting here. Well, Elle's just like, I want in. And so she's just like, bah, 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 like yelling, screaming, all this. And then we realize, like, we look at her, and then she's like, what are you trying to say? And she's just, like, she got nothing. And in this, what I love is, like, that little girl, she just wants to be heard. She just wants to be acknowledged and heard in the household. That's what she longed for. Because when she gets the attention, she didn't have anything to say. She just got a big grin on her face because she knows that she's been seen. And what I love about God coming to Moses and says, I've heard my people. I've heard the grumbles. I've heard the groans. Well, I want you to know something. If you're walking in a wilderness right now, if you're walking through a wilderness moment that you think, where is God in this? Is God even aware of what's going on in my life? Does God even care what's going on in my life? One of the things that you can take from this story and you can directly apply to your life right now is this, is that God hears your cries from the wilderness. God hears your cries from the wilderness. I know there's times it feels like it doesn't. I know there's times that it seems like it's impossible, but know this. God hears your cries from the wilderness. And sometimes it's the cries of the wilderness is really all you got. Because the wilderness would have us believe that we're isolated, that we're far from God, but we can take it as a sign from God's previous faithfulness to his people, that he will be faithful today and that he will be faithful tomorrow. That's the hope that we can depend on when we talk about the God who was and is to come. As he was the provider who was, he is the provider who is, and he is the provider who will be. That is the faith that we can get from what God has done in the past. And as it moves into our present and into our future, that's where we can claim our hope and our assurance. But he continues, this is in verse 12. He says, I have heard the grumbling of the people of Israel. And so say to them, at twilight, you shall eat meat. And in the morning, you shall be filled with bread, and then you shall know that I am the Lord your God. And so, just like God says, this is what happens in the evening. The quail came up and they covered the camp, and in the morning, dew lay around all the camp. And when the dew had gone up, there was on the face of the wilderness a fine flake-like thing, as fine as frost on the ground. And so the people, they wake up and then they see it, and they asked one another, they said, what is it? What is it? What is this on the ground? And we'll get a description of it later, but what I love is Moses' response. Actually, what I love is that Moses says this. They asked each other, what is it? For they did not know what it was. Like, thank you for clarifying that. But in this, Moses says to him, says, it is the bread that the Lord has given you to eat. What I love about this response right here is that Moses says, I don't give a rip what you call it. What you need to know about this is not what the name of the bread is, but you need to know the name of the one that gave you the bread. And he says, it is the bread that God has given you. The same God that heard your grumbles, the same God that heard your cries, the same God that sees you in the wilderness is the same God that provides for you. So what is it? What is it? It's what you were asking for. It's God showing up in your life. If you go down about 15 verses, it gives you a description of the people of Israel. They called it manna. And it was like a coriander seed. It was white, and the taste was like wafers made with honey. It made me long for good communion bread, if you remember those days. But in that, you get this description of what the people ate and the way that God provided for them. And I love that. What is it? Oh, it's what God has given to you. And then comes the lesson moment. If we go back up to verse 16, he says, this is what the Lord commanded of them. He said, gather of it, each one of you, as much as you can eat. You shall take an omer, which is just a unit of measure. It's not really important what it means. All that matters is that this is what they were to take. And they were to take according to the number of the people that they had in each of their house. But what was the response? Gather of it, as much as you need. As much as you need. And so their response, they go out and they say, okay, let's get it. They gathered it. Some gathered more, some gathered less. But then in verse 21, it says this, that morning by morning, they gathered it, each of them, as much as he could eat. There was no portion control. There's no rationing here. God isn't saying, okay, look, you can have this much, and if you split it up between houses, this should be enough. No. God says, look, if I'm going to provide, I'm going to provide. What do you need? What do you need? Take what you need. Take what you need, because that's the kind of way that God shows up. And what I love about this, if you skip down to verse 35, Moses is kind of recapping this, says that the people of Israel, they ate the manna for 40 years. For 40 years. I don't know about you. I don't know if there's many meals that you could eat for 40 years. I'm pretty just set in my life that chicken tenders is something that I'm going to be able to eat for 40 years. I've been eating chicken tenders since I was a kid. I'm 31 years old. I'll eat the mess out of some chicken tenders right now, okay? And so what I love is just that the people of Israel, well, they ate this manna for 40 years. And in this, I don't think that this is a talk and a description of something that they got sick and tired of. What I love is that for 40 years, God pulled through morning by morning, morning by morning, morning by morning. And so guys, I don't know how long you've been in the wilderness that you're wandering in. And I don't know for how much longer you will be wandering in this wilderness that you are in. But if there is a lesson that you can take away from the wilderness, it is this, that you do not have to be delivered from the wilderness to be delivered in the wilderness. You do not have to be delivered from whatever wilderness experience that you are wandering in to experience deliverance in the moment. If there's something that you can bank on, it is the fact that God hears you, but it is more than the fact that God hears you. It's that you have a God that's willing to do something about it. And it may not be the answer that you're looking for. It may not be the answer that you're desiring. And it may not be the answer that if you got to write the story of how you would write the ending of the story, but you can know this, that God is in the business of delivering his people. And God is in the business of being a provider to his people. And this story, this glimpse, proves that the God who was and is to come, the God that provided is the God who provides and is the God who will provide. You see, sometimes in our desire to get out of the wilderness, well, it can cause us to miss what God would have for us in the wilderness. And I think the takeaway is that what God has for you in the wilderness is that he has for you to experience what a life that is fully dependent on God looks like when it is met with the dependable nature of God. It is when you long to be dependent on God and it is met with the nature of God that is dependable. For 40 years, the children of Israel went out every morning and gathered what they needed. 40 years, God didn't miss a day. For 40 years. So let me ask, you in a wilderness today? Chances are some of you are. And I have bad news. A 20 or so minute sermon is not going to deliver you from the wilderness. I'm sorry. I don't have that power. At least I know that. But I do know this. I do know the God who can. And I do know the God who will deliver you in the wilderness. And I do know the God that even though you may not get the answer you wanted, he'll give you the answer you need. And he'll provide for you every step of the way. I've got some words that are from Lamentations chapter 3 that I hope if you're one of these people that's walking through a wilderness right now, that you'll grab onto these words, that you'll grab a hold of this because it may be all you get today, but this is God maybe giving you what you need. But the writer says this, that says, remember my affliction and my wanderings. Sound right? Sound familiar? It says the wormwood and the gall. It's a figure of speech. It's talking about the bitterness, the disorientation that comes from walking through wilderness moments. It's asking God, would you remember my affliction? Because my soul does. My soul continually remembers these wanderings and is bowed down within me. It says, but I call this to mind, and therefore I have hope that the steadfast love of the Lord never ceases. And his mercies, they never come to an end. And they are new every, what? That they are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness. Guys, we may not be able to deliver you from your wilderness, but I can promise you this. We'll walk with you through it. And so if today is a day that you're like, you know what, I'm tired of walking by myself. I'm tired of wandering by myself. There's some folks on our prayer team. There's some folks on our staff. They're going to be right out these doors over here in that little space that we call the green room. If we can walk alongside you, we'd be honored to do so. Like I said, we may not be able to deliver you, but we can point you back towards the God who will. Let me pray for you and then we'll go. Father, I'm thankful for this day that we can gather together as family to one another. That whether we're here physically or we're here spiritually and tuning in from wherever we may be, I'm thankful that we have the opportunity to be like family to one another. And God, I'm thankful for the reminders of your previous faithfulness that gives us hope in our current circumstances, and it gives us hope for our futures. And God, may we be people that cling to the reality that your mercies are new every morning. Father, would you allow us to see that and to experience that in tangible ways? And as we walk through the wilderness, would you help us see that we don't walk alone? God, we love you, and we all say it together in Jesus' name. Amen.
Hey church, my name is Haley, and I just want to thank y'all for worshiping with us today. If you didn't grab one of these on your way in, there is some information about things that we have coming up, including Easter. So if you want to sign up to serve or want to find out more information, please make sure to grab this or check out our new app. We couldn't do it without you. Thanks for giving generously. There are giving boxes at every door and online at northfieldchurch.net/give. So I hope y'all have a great week. We'll see you soon.